Chapter 23. A clock. I can almost see the hands ticking around the 12-section face of the arena. Each hour begins a new horror, a new game maker weapon, and ends the previous. Lightning, blood rain, fog, monkeys, those are the first 4 hours on the clock. And at 10, the wave. I don't know what happens in the other 7, but I know Wyrus is right. At present, the blood rain's falling and we're on the beach below the monkey segment, far too close to the fog for my liking. Do the various attacks stay within the confines of the jungle? Not necessarily. The wave didn't. If that fog leaches out of the jungle or the monkeys return. Get up, I order, shaking Peeta and Finnick and Joanna away. Get up. We have to move. There's enough time, though, to explain the clock theory to them, about Wyrus's tick-tocking, and how the movements of the invisible hands trigger a deadly force in each section. I think I've convinced everyone who's conscious, except Joanna, who's naturally opposed to liking anything I suggest, but even she agrees it's better to be safe than sorry. While the others collect our few possessions and get Beatty back into his jumpsuit, I rouse Wyrus. She awakes with a panicked, "Tick-tock!" Yes, tick-tock. The arena's a clock. It's a clock, Wyrus. You were right. I say you were right. Relief floods her face. I guess because somebody has finally understood what she's probably known from the first tolling of the bells. Midnight. It starts at midnight, I confirm. A memory struggles to surface in my brain. I see a clock. No, it's a watch, resting in Plutarch Heavensby's palm. It starts at midnight, Plutarch said, and then my mockingjay lit up briefly and vanished. In retrospect, it's like he was giving me a clue about the arena. But why would he? At that time, I was no more attributing these games than he was. Maybe he thought it would help me as a mentor? Or maybe this had been the plan all along. Wyrus nods at the blood rain. 1:30, she says. Exactly, 1:30. And at 2, a terrible poisonous fog begins there, I say, pointing at the nearby jungle. So we have to move somewhere safe now. She smiles and stands up obediently. Are you thirsty? I hand her the woven bowl and she gulps down about a quart. Finnick gives her one last bit of bread and she gnaws on it. With the inability to communicate overcome, she's functioning again. I check my weapons, tie up the spile and the tube of medicine in the parachute and fix it to my belt with the vine. Beatty's still pretty out of it, but when Peeta tries to lift him, he objects. Wire, he says. She's right here, Peeta tells him. Wyrus is fine, she's coming too. But Beatty still struggles. Wire, he insists. Oh, I know what he wants, says Joanna impatiently. She crosses the beach and picks up a cylinder we took from his belt when we were bathing him. It's coated in a thick layer of congealed blood. This worthless thing, it's some kind of wire or something. That's how he got cut, running up to the cornucopia to get this. I don't know what kind of weapon it's supposed to be. I guess you could pull off a piece and use it as a garrote or something. But really, can you imagine Beatty garroting somebody? He won his games with wire, setting up that electrical trap, says Peeta. It's the best weapon he could have. There's something odd about Joanna not putting this together. Something that doesn't quite ring true. Seems like you'd have figured that out, I say, since you nicknamed him Volts and all. Joanna's eyes narrow at me dangerously. Yeah, that was really stupid of me, wasn't it? She says. I guess I must have been distracting by keeping your little friends alive. While you were, what, again? Getting Mags killed off? My fingers tighten on the knife handle at my belt. Go ahead. Try it. I don't care if you are knocked up. I'll rip your throat out, says Joanna. I know I can't kill her right now, but it's a matter of time with Joanna and me, before one of us offs the other. Maybe we all better be careful where we step, says Finnick, shooting me a look. He takes the coil and sets it on Beatty's chest. There's your wire, Volts. Watch where you plug it. Peeta picks up the now unresisting Beatty. Where to? I'd like to go to the cornucopia and watch. Just make sure we're right about the clock, says Finnick. It seems as good a plan as any. Besides, I wouldn't mind the chance of going over the weapons again. And there are 6 of us now. Even if you count Beatty and Wirus out, we've got 4 good fighters. It's so different from where I was last year at this point, doing everything on my own. Yes, it's great to have allies, as long as you can ignore the thought that you'll have to kill them. Beatty and Wirus will probably find some way to die on their own. If we have to run from something, how far would they get? Joanna, frankly, I could easily kill if it came down to protecting PETA, or maybe even just to shut her up. What I really need is for someone to take Finnick out for me, since I don't think I can do it personally. Not after all he's done for PETA. I think about maneuvering him into some kind of encounter with the careers. It's cold, I know, but what are my options? Now that we know about the clock, he probably won't die in the jungle, so someone's going to have to kill him in battle. Because this is so repellent to think about, my mind frantically tries to change topics. But the only thing that distracts me from my current situation is fantasizing about killing President Snow. Not very pretty daydreams for a 17-year-old girl, I guess, but very satisfying. We walk down the nearest sand strip, approaching the cornucopia with care, just in case the careers are concealed there. I doubt they are, because we've been on the beach for hours and there's been no sign of life. The area is abandoned, as I expected. Only the big golden horn and the picked-over pile of weapons remain. When PETA lays Beatty in the bit of shade the cornucopia provides, he calls out to Wirus. She crouches beside him and pulls the coil of wire in her hands. "Clean it, will you?" he asks. Wirus nods and scampers over to the water's edge, where she dunks the coil in the water. She starts quietly singing some funny little song about a mouse running up a clock. It must be for children, but it seems to make her happy. "Oh, not the song again," says Joanna, rolling her eyes. "That went on for hours before she started tick-tocking." Suddenly, Wirus stands up very straight and points to the jungle. "2," she says. I follow her finger to where the wall of fog has just begun to seep out into the beach. Yes, look, Wirus is right. It's 2 o'clock and the fog has started. "Like clockwork," says PETA. "You are very smart to figure that out, Wirus." Wirus smiles and goes back to singing and dunking her coil. "Oh, she's more than smart," says Beatty. "She's intuitive." We all turn to look at Beatty, who seems to be coming back to life. She can sense things before anyone else, like a canary in one of your coal mines. "What's that?" Finnick asks me. "It's a bird that we take down into the mines to warn us if there's bad air," I say. "What's it do? Die?" asks Joanna. "It stops singing first. That's when you should get out. But if the air's too bad, it dies. Yes, and so do you. I don't want to talk about dying songbirds. They bring up thoughts of my father's death, and Rue's death, and Maisie Donner's death, and my mother inheriting her songbird. Oh, great. And now I'm thinking of Gale deep down in that horrible mine, with President Snow's threat hanging over his head. So easy to make it look like an accident down there. A silent canary, a spark, and nothing more. I go back to imagine killing the president. Despite her annoyance at Wirus, Joanna's as happy as I've seen her in the arena. While I'm adding to my stock of arrows, she pokes around until she comes up with a pair of lethal-looking axes. It seems an odd choice, until I see her throw one with such force it sticks into the sun-softened gold of the cornucopia. Of course, Joanna Mason, District 7, lumber. I bet she's been tossing around axes since she could toddle. It's like Finnick with his trident, or Beatty with his wire, Rue with her knowledge of plants. I realize it's just another disadvantage in District 12 the District 12 tributes have faced over the years. We don't go down the mines until we're 18. It looks like most of the other tributes learn something about their trades early on. There are things you do in a mine that could come in handy in the games. Wielding a pick, blowing things up, give you an edge, the way my hunting did. But we learned them too late. While I've been messing with the weapons, Pete been squatting on the ground, drawing something with the tip of his knife on a large, smooth leaf that he brought from the jungle. I look over his shoulder and I see he's creating a map of the arena. In the center is the cornucopia on its circle of sand and the 12 strips branching out from it. It looks like a pie, sliced into 12 equal wedges. There's another circle representing the water line and a slightly larger one indicating the edge of the jungle. "Look how the cornucopia is positioned," he says to me. I examine the cornucopia and see what he means. "The tail points toward 12 o'clock, I say. "Right, so this is the top of our clock," he says, and he quickly scratches the numbers 1 through 12 around the clock face. 12 to 1 is the lightning zone. He writes lightning in tiny print in the corresponding wedge, then works clockwise, adding blood, fog, and monkeys in the following sections. "And 10 to 11 is the wave," I say. He adds it. Finnick and Joanna join us at this point, and armed to the teeth with tridents, axes, and knives. "Did you notice anything unusual in the others?" I asked Joanna and Beatty, since they might have seen something we didn't. But all they've seen is a lot of blood. I guess they could hold anything. "I'm going to mark the ones where we know the game maker's weapon follows us out past the jungle, so we'll steer clear of those," says PETA, drawing diagonal lines in the fog and wave beaches. Then he sits back. "Well, it's a lot more than we knew this morning anyway." We all nod in agreement. And that's when I notice it. The silence. Our canary has stopped singing. I don't wait. I load an arrow as I twist, and I get a glimpse of a dripping wet gloss letting Wyra slide to the ground. Her throat slit open in a bright red smile. The point of my arrow disappears into his right temple, and in an instant it takes to reload. Joanna has buried an axe blade in Cashmere's chest. Finnick knocks away a spear Brutus throws at PETA and takes Inabaria's knife in the thigh. If there wasn't a cornucopia to duck behind, they'd be dead, both the tributes from District 2. I spring forward in pursuit. Boom, boom, boom. The cannon confirms there's no way to help Wyrus. No need to finish off Gloss or Cashmere. My allies and I are rounding the horn, starting to give chase to Brutus and Inabaria, who are sprinting down a sand strip towards the jungle. Suddenly, the ground jerks beneath my feet, and I'm flung on my side in the sand. The circle of land that holds the cornucopia starts spinning fast, really fast, and I can see the jungle going by in a blur. I feel the centrifugal force pulling me toward the water and dig my hands and feet into the sand, trying to get some purchase on the unstable ground. Between the flying sand and the dizziness, I have to squeeze my eyes shut. There's literally nothing I can do but hold on. With no deceleration, we slam to a stop. Coughing and queasy, I sit up slowly to find my companions in the same condition. Finnick, Joanna, and PETA have hung on. The 3 dead bodies have been tossed out into the seawater. The whole thing, from missing Wyrus' song to now, can't have taken more than a minute or two. We sit there panting, scraping the sand out of our mouths. "Where's Volts?" says Joanna. We're on our feet. One wobbly circle of the cornucopia confirms he's gone. Finnick spots him about 20 yards out in the water, barely keeping afloat, and swims out to haul him in. Then, that's when I remember the wire and how important it was to him. I look frantically around. Where is it? Where is it? And then I see it, still clutched in Wyrus' hands, far out in the water. My stomach contracts at the thought of what I must do next. "Cover me," I say to the others. I toss aside my weapons and race down the strip closest to her body. Without slowing down, I dive into the water and start for her. Out of the corner of my eye, I can see the hovercraft appearing over us, the claw starting to descend to take her away, but I don't stop. I just keep swimming, as hard as I can, and end up slamming into her body. I come up gasping, trying to avoid swallowing the blood-stained water that spreads out from the open wound in her neck. She's floating on her back, borne up by her belt and death, staring into the relentless sun. As I tread water, I have to wrench the coil of wire from her fingers because her final grip on it is so tight. There's nothing I can do then but close her eyelids, whisper goodbye, and swim away. By the time I swing up the coil onto the sand and pull myself from the water, her body's gone, but I can still taste her blood mingled with the sea salt. I walk back to the cornucopia. Finnick's gotten Beatty back alive, although a little waterlogged, sitting up and snorting out water. He had the good sense to hang on to his glasses, so at least he can see. I place the reel of wire on his lap. It's sparkling clean, no blood left at all. He unravels a piece of wire and runs it through his fingers. For the first time I see it, and it's unlike any wire I know, a pale golden color and as fine as a piece of hair. I wonder how long it is. There must be miles of this stuff to fill the large spool. But I don't ask because I know he's thinking of Wyrus. I look at the others' sober faces. Now Finnick, Joanna, and Beatty have all lost their district's partners. I cross to Peta and wrap my arms around him, and for a while we stay silent. Let's get off this stinking island, Joanna says finally. There's only the matter of our weapons now, which we've largely retained. Fortunately, the vines here are strong, and the spile and the tube of medicine wrapped in the parachute are still secured to my belt. Finnick strips off his undershirt and ties it around the wound Inabari's knife made in his thigh. It's not deep. Beatty thinks he can walk now if we go slowly, so I help him up. We decide to head to the beach at 12 o'clock. That should provide hours of calm and keep us clear of any poisonous residue. And then Peta, Joanna, and Finnick head off in 3 different directions. 12 o'clock, right? Says Peta. The tail points at 12. Before they spun us, says Finnick, I was judging by the sun. The sun only tells you it's going on 4, Finnick, I say. I think Katniss's point is, knowing the time doesn't mean you necessarily know where 4 is on the clock. You might have a general idea of the direction, unless you consider that you might have shifted the outer ring of the jungle as well. No, Katniss's point was a lot more basic than that. Beta's articulated a theory far beyond my comment on the sun, but I just nod my head like I've been on the same page all along. Yes, so any of those paths could lead to 12 o'clock, I say. We circle around the cornucopia, scrutinizing the jungle. It has a baffling uniformity. I remember the tall tree that took the first lightning strike at 12 o'clock, but every sector has a similar tree. Joanna thinks to follow Inabaria's and Brutus' tracks, but they've been blown or washed away. There's no way to tell where anything is. I shouldn't have never mentioned the clock, I say bitterly. Now they've taken that advantage away as well. Only temporarily, says Beatty. At 10, we'll see the wave again and be back on track. Yeah, they can't redesign the whole arena, says Peta. It doesn't matter, says Joanna impatiently. You had to tell us, or we never would have moved our camp in the first place, brainless. Ironically, her logical, if demeaning, reply is the only one that comforts me. Yes, I had to tell them to get them to move. Come on, I need water. Anyone have a good gut feeling? We randomly choose a path and take it, having no idea what number we're headed for. When we reach the jungle, we peer into it, trying to decipher what may be waiting inside. Well, it must be monkey hour. I don't see any of them in here, says Peta. I'm going to try to tap a tree. No, it's my turn, said Finnick. I'll at least watch your back, Peta says. Katniss can do that, says Joanna. We need to make another map. The other one washed away. She yanks a large leaf off a tree and hands it to him. For a moment, I'm suspicious that they're trying to divide and kill us. But it doesn't make sense. I'll have the advantage on Finnick if he's dealing with the tree, and Peta's much bigger than Joanna. So I follow Finnick about 15 yards into the jungle where he finds a good tree and starts stabbing to make a hole with his knife. As I stand there, weapons ready, I can't lose the uneasy feeling that something is going on and it has to do with Peta. I retrace our steps, starting from the moment the gong rang out, searching for the source of my discomfort. Finnick towing Peta in off his metal plate. Finnick reviving Peta after the force field stopped his heart. Mags running into the fog so that Finnick could carry Peta. The morphling hurling herself in front of him to block the monkey's attack. The fight with the careers was so quick, but didn't Finnick block Brutus's spear from hitting Peta, even though it meant taking Inabaria's knife in the leg? And even now, Joanna has him drawing a map on a leaf rather than risking the jungle. There's no question about it. For reasons completely unfathomable to me, some of the other victors are trying to keep him alive, even if it means sacrificing themselves. I'm dumbfounded. For one thing, that's my job. For another, it doesn't make sense. Only one of us can get out, so why have they chosen Peta to protect? What has Hamish possibly said to them? What has he bargained with to make them put Peeta's life above their own? I know my own reasons for keeping Peeta alive. He's my friend, and this is my way to defy the capital, to subvert its terrible games. But if I had no real ties to him, what would make me want to save him, to choose him over myself? Certainly he's brave, but we all have been brave enough to survive in games. There is that quality of goodness that's hard to overlook, but still. And then I think of it, what Peeta can do so much better than the rest of us. He can use words. He obliterated the rest of the field at both interviews. And maybe it's because of that underlying goodness that he can move a crowd, no, a country, to his side with the turn of a simple sentence. I remember thinking that was the gift the leader of our revolution should have. Has Hamish convinced others of this? That Peeta's tongue would have far better, greater power against the capital than any physical strength the rest of us could claim? I don't know. It still seems like a really long leap for some of the tributes. I mean, we're talking about Joanna Mason here. But what other explanation can there be for their decided efforts to keep him alive? Katniss, got that spile? Finnick asks, snapping me back to reality. I cut the vine that ties the spile to my belt and hold the metal tube out to him. That's when I hear the scream. So full of fear and pain, it ices my blood, and so familiar. I drop the spile, forget where I am or what lies ahead, only know I must reach her, protect her. I run wildly in the direction of the voice, heedless of danger, ripping through vines and branches, through anything that keeps me from reaching her, from reaching my little sister.